What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the great folks at NerdTees, and welcome to week 18 of my weekly CFL football pick show for the 2018 CFL regular season and playoffs. And it's time. Got to get the pun in on my title image, my splash image. It's time for some hot CFL picks. How hot, you might ask? Last week I went 4-0 straight up, picked all the games correctly, fantastic. I was 3-1 against the spread, only missed the one game ATS last week. We split even money on the over-unders, which is about what I've been doing par for the course all season. Straight up, 42-23 on the season, 65%, getting much closer to where we want to be. Against the spread, now 35-30, that's up to 54%, which is good. Again, still trending closer to where I want to be, which is closer to the high 50s and into 60. Over under now 33-30 with the two pushes on the season. That's 51%. Overall, 9-3 in week 17 across all of our CFL picks. That has us 110-83 with the two pushes on the over-under. That's 56.41%. It's over 55. It's getting closer to where we want to be. Again, I want to be much closer to the high 50s, pushing towards 60%. Update you on the CFL standings and just a couple of things. I'm not going to talk about the scoring margins anymore because, I mean, it takes up time in the video and I don't necessarily think you guys are interested in that. But here are the updated standings, and we got a couple more teams that have that lovely little X beside their name, which means they are playoff bound. In the East, Ottawa still leads it at 8-6, leading the East Division. They are locked in. They have made the playoffs. The Hamilton Tiger Cats follow them at 7-7. They are locked in. They have made the playoffs. Toronto and Montreal each still only have their 3 wins. Toronto's got them in 14 games. Montreal's got them in 15. Both of those teams, I believe, have been officially eliminated from playoff contention. In the West Division, Calgary still leads the way 12-2. They've got the X. They're locked into the playoffs, along with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. The Roughriders get to double-digit wins. They are now at 10-5. They've got the X. They are locked into the playoffs. And now where it really gets interesting is the crossover scenarios, because at the bottom of the West Division, you've got Winnipeg at 8-7, you've got BC at 7-7, and you've got Edmonton now under 500 at 7-8. All of those teams are within 2 points of each other, basically within one game. It's still anybody's ball game. Our Week 18 schedule sees Hamilton travel to Toronto to take on the Argos. Saskatchewan is in Winnipeg to take on the Blue Bombers, rematch of the Banjo Bowl from a few weeks ago. You've got Ottawa in Edmonton taking on a desperate Eskimos team. They have to be desperate. And the BC Lions travel to Calgary to face league-leading Stamps. Let's kick things off in Toronto with that Battle of Ontario. Hamilton and Toronto. Ticats come into this game. They won last week. They're still under 500 on the road for the season. They're just 3-4. But in their last 4 games, they've been outscoring opponents by nearly a touchdown. Last 4 games, it's been 34-28 on the happy side of par for the Ticats. Hamilton comes into this game off of their bye, but also coming off of a 40-10 victory over the BC Lions. That was back in week 16. Ticats jumped out to a 20-0 lead in that game. They led the game 30-3 at the half. They allowed a garbage time touchdown, but that was really pretty much it. Hamilton appears to have managed to create a new star in their backfield. That is running back John White. His last 2 games, he's touched the ball 34 times, carried the ball 34 times, put up a $171, scored a rushing touchdown. Brandon Banks also returned in that game 2 weeks ago. 9 catches, 79 yards, 2 touchdowns. Brandon Banks has 6 touchdowns in his last 3 football games. If you're taking a prop bet, a Brandon Banks touchdown would be a pretty damn good bet. The pass rush really heated up in that game for Hamilton. They had 6 sacks in that game against BC 2 weeks ago. They only had 16 coming into that game in the previous 13 games they played, so just barely over 1 a game, and then they fire it up and they get 6 against BC. The defense also forced 5 turnovers off of mediocre quarterback play. They got bad Jennings, Jonathan Jennings. Now we take a look at the Argos, losers of 6 consecutive games. They're under 500 at home, only 3-4, an equal record to Hamilton on the road. And in their last 4 games, they've been being outscored by double digits, 33-23. Toronto coming off of a 3-point loss to the Lions last week. Both of these teams coming into this game off of games against the Lions. The comeback, Toronto damn near comes back in that football game. Just falls a little bit short. Medeiros botches, not a kick this time. Well, technically it was. Botching an onside kick with just about 40 seconds or so left in the game. Argos are going back to James Franklin at quarterback. James Franklin on the season is averaging 134 yards per game that he plays. 5 touchdowns to 8 interceptions is his touchdown-interception ratio. And that's including the 2 touchdowns that he threw in that game during that comeback against BC. So he came into that game with a 3 to 8 touchdown-to-interception ratio, which is marginally worse. He also has the highest interception percentage of any quarterback this season that's thrown at least 150 passes. The Argos did do a couple of things decently in that football game last week. They established the run really well. They picked up 202 yards rushing on 24 carries. That is something that you can work with going forward. I sound like I'm talking about Montreal. They only allowed 1 touchdown in that football game. So these are bright spots moving forward for the Argos, just probably not this week. Don't get me wrong, the Argos can run the football here. This is a spot where the run game should be able to do some damage. Hamilton allows over 110 yards per game on the ground, but James Franklin is an albatross at the quarterback position. I realize that McLeod Bethel-Thompson was not good in that game last week and hasn't really been good over his last few. I mean, I can't take James Franklin to win this football game, even though the game is in Toronto. We're going to take the road team here. We're going to take the Hamilton Tiger Cats in Toronto to hang a loss on the Argos. On the line, Argos are 7-point dogs at home. Hamilton favored by a full touchdown on the road. And I'm actually going to take that. And it seems like a big number, but Hamilton loves playing on Friday night. Few weeks ago, I mentioned that. It's a thing in the CFL, the Friday night game. In Hamilton's last 9 games playing on Friday night football, marquee football game, the last 9 times they've done it, they've won against the spread 8 times and had a push. They have not lost against the spread in their last 9 games on Friday night. Total in the game is 52.5, and I think this is the total that I'm probably the most secure in this week. The two teams are only 14-14 on the over-under, so no real strong lean one way or the other there. But I personally capped this game at going better than a field goal over that total. So I feel pretty good taking the over on that one. We're going to go over 52.5 points in Hamilton, Toronto. Let's go to Winnipeg now, where we got a Banjo Bowl rematch. The Saskatchewan Roughriders are in town taking on the Blue Bombers. Both of these teams actually come into this game winners of their last 3 straight. So 2 teams really hitting their stride at the right time. The Roughriders come into this game outscoring opponents by just a slim margin, 2 points over their last 4 games, 27-25, but come in off of a 7-point victory against Edmonton last week, 19-12. It was a poor offensive performance from the Roughriders, and they have some key injuries on the offensive side of the ball, not the least of which being Marcus Thigpen at the running back position. But they've got some injuries to wide receivers, some other running back injuries. Like, there's a lot of injuries on the offensive side of the ball. Really got bailed out by Willie Jefferson's pick 6 late in the game. Pick 6 off of Mike Riley. That won the game for them. And due, I'm sure, in no small part to the Marcus Thigpen injury, just 1 week after the Roughriders went 23 carries for 118 yards and 3 touchdowns, the run game completely disappeared last week. What was it? 12 carries for 32 yards. That is under 3 yards per carry. That's the kind of line that Cedric Benson looks at and goes, huh. But the Roughriders did something that the Roughriders do very well, which is rode their defense to a victory. 5 sacks in that game, 3 interceptions. They force a fumble as part of 5 turnovers generated by the defense. But they did play undisciplined. They took 11 penalties in that game, 110 yards in penalties. That's way too much against high competition. I don't think I mentioned it, but the Roughriders are actually a pretty darn good road team as well. 5-2 on the season. Blue Bombers come into this game with an above 500 record at home, just 4-3, but in their last 4 games, outscoring opponents by 12 points on average, 32-20, and that is the largest margin in the CFL over that time span. Blue Bombers coming off of an 8-point overtime victory against the Ottawa REDBLACKS, 40-32 last week, but they led that game by 15 points very late in the game, about 5 minutes left in that football game. As a matter of fact, they needed an overtime red zone stand where they forced a fumble, recovered the fumble to end the football game, but they needed that because Ottawa really took their lunch money in the latter part of that fourth quarter. It was a sloppy finish marked by very poor ball security in that game. 4 turnovers for the Blue Bombers. That's too many. And it actually overshadowed a really great quarterback matchup. Matt Nichols, and we'll talk about Trevor Harris when we talk about Ottawa. They really went back and forth in that football game. One of the best quarterback matchups I think I've seen all season. Just so you don't think I'm ragging on you, Winnipeg, here's a piece of great news. Andrew Harris is back. Harris now with back-to-back games where he carries the ball 20 times and has at least 3 catches in the passing game. If Andrew Harris is back, I've already declared that he is, but if Andrew Harris is back, that is bad news for the rest of the league, especially come playoff time. Both of these teams, as I mentioned before, are really, peaking at the right time, but the Bombers are really heating up here. The defense is playing great. The offense is putting up points. But the main thing about this game is I think this game is 100% Banjo Bowl revenge. Winnipeg lost the Banjo Bowl. I think it's 4 straight Banjo Bowls now that they've lost to Saskatchewan. They want revenge. They've got revenge on their mind. This is a pivotal game in terms of the playoff picture. Saskatchewan doesn't need to win this game. Winnipeg does. When in doubt, grab the more desperate team. I'm going to take the Blue Bombers here at home to hang a loss on the Roughriders. Winnipeg favored by 3.5 points at home against the spread, and I think I'm actually going to take that, but it was pretty well a coin flip. These are 2 good teams, so I was really tempted to hedge my bets on that one, so we're going to take that. Let's hammer the Blue Bombers and take Winnipeg minus the 3.5. Total in this game is 53 points, which I think is pretty well a perfect total. The 2 teams are 18-11 over under, which would normally be a very strong lean to the over. But this is just kind of a gut feeling. I think I'm going to stay under on it and have to sweat this game out. It's a hold your nose play one way. It doesn't really matter what way you do it. It's a gut feeling, but especially with Saski's injuries on the offensive side, I think I'm going to lean under 53 points in Winnipeg, Saski. We'll take this opportunity in the episode, as we always do, to plug our good friends at NerdTees, nerdtees.ca. Use the promo code BWFinest. That's going to save you 15% at checkout. Free shipping on any order in Canada over $50. If you're in the US, 2 clicks of a button, boom, everything's in US prices. Find yourself something to love and find someone you love something to love on NerdTees, like my blend today, which is Japanese orange cooler. Citrusy and delicious, my friends. Nerdtees.ca, promo code BWFinest. Let's go to Edmonton now, where the reeling Eskimos welcome in the Ottawa REDBLACKS. REDBLACKS lost last week. They're above 500 on the road at 4-3, but in the last 4 games, they're actually getting outscored on average. It's only by a single point, 26-27, but it's giving up more than it's scoring. Ottawa coming off of the aforementioned 40-32 overtime loss last week against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But quite frankly, this was a team that, and I said this, they didn't deserve to win that game. I would say they didn't even deserve to be in overtime, much less have a shot to win that football game. And here's what I mean by that before REDBLACKS fans start yelling at me. Ottawa had one of the most undisciplined performances in a football game that I have seen this season or in recent memory. 12 penalties for 174 yards. 174 yards in penalties. Not only that, they tied the turnover battle, and that's great, but they tied it at 4. If you turn the ball over 4 times and take 174 yards in penalties, you don't deserve to win, nor do you deserve to be in overtime. And once again, the lack of discipline and the questionable ball security really overshadowed what was arguably Trevor Harris's best game of the season. Harris throws for 73%, 349 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. I've been very critical of him throwing picks and not being a finisher. He didn't throw picks and he was a finisher in that football game. These are his numbers when Ottawa's comeback began until the end of that football game. So the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter and all of overtime. He went 15 of 20, threw for 192 yards, threw 2 touchdowns, and a successful 2-point convert to send this game into overtime. Trevor Harris took this team on his shoulders and said, I'm going to do absolutely everything that I can to win us this football game, and he damn near did it. On the other end of the ball, the Eskimos are losers of 3 straight games, but they are 5-2 at home, so they're in a good position here. But in their last 4 games, they've been outscored by double digits. They're being outscored 30-20 in their last 4 games. Eskimos coming off of that aforementioned 19-12 loss against the Roughriders last week. And that was a football game where Mike Riley officially hit rock bottom for his season. He threw just 48%. Only 222 yards. He did not find the end zone, but he did find 3 Roughriders players for interceptions. I say again, the Eskimos are not set up to win when Mike Riley does not play like Mike Riley or is not put in a position to play like Mike Riley. Riley has only hit 300 yards 1 time in his last 5 football games. In his last 3, his touchdown to interception ratio is 1-6. Not 6-1, 1-6. You can't win that way if you're the Eskimos. You can't. Some good things happened for the Eskimos on defense. Again, the defense much maligned, giving up 30 points a game in their last 4. Some good things happened. They sacked Saskatchewan's quarterback, Collaros, 3 times. They had 4 pass knockdowns. That's an active secondary all of a sudden, so some good things were happening on the defensive side. I truly, genuinely believe that the Eskimos are too good of a football team to be this bad for this long, and Ottawa has a ton of stuff that they need to clean up from their game last week. I don't know how much I trust Ottawa right now to win this game. I think I'm going to take the Eskimos here because, again, they have to be the more desperate team inside that tight bottom half of the West Division. It's our second hold the nose of the week. I'm actually going to take the Eskimos here. They've been a good home team this year. I think they get the job done. Let's take Edmonton at home to beat Ottawa. On the line, Edmonton's favored by 3.5 points at home. That I can't take. I got to hedge my bets on this one, and it's full disclosure, this is me hedging. Ottawa plus the 3.5 because I have to see it with Edmonton. I have to see Edmonton do it before I can start taking them not only straight up, but hammering them against the spread. I just can't personally do that. Ottawa could definitely win this game. Total in this game is 51 points. The 2 teams are a combined 12, 16, and 1 on the over-under. This is probably my second straight gut play here, but I think I've got to go over. I mean, it's a low 50. It's a very low 50. With a defense that's been giving up 30 points a game over its last 4. And I mean, Ottawa's defense has been really nothing to write home about. They've been giving up 27. So I just feel like this is going to be an offensive shootout. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. So let's go over 51 points in Edmonton, Ottawa. And the last game we're going to look at here sees the Calgary Stampeders at home playing host to the BC Lions. Lions won at home last week. Now they've got to hit the road where they have been worse than terrible on the road this year. Only 1-6 away from their own home building. In the last 4 games, they've been being outscored by a single point, 27-26. Again, BC comes off that aforementioned 3-point win against the Argos last week in BC. The offense really struggled in that game to hold the 2-possession lead that they had late in the game versus a bad defense. I mean, it's interesting to me. They were only able to score 6 points in the second half. In that football game, however, Bad Jennings graduated to Bland Jennings. Had a very bland game, very average game, only 58%, 199 yards, but he did throw a touchdown and didn't throw an interception. Luckily, the Lions are back to master Travis Lulay this week. Speaking of people who are going to be playing for BC this week, apparently Tyrell Sutton is going to not only be making his Lions debut, but is reportedly going to get the start in this game. And that's a questionable move for me. Not because I have anything against Tyrell Sutton or I'm the world's biggest Jeremiah Johnson fan, but Jeremiah Johnson's coming off of a game where he carried the ball 19 times and put up a $118. So what kind of message is that sending to a guy who all season has been your lead back? I think was the lead back all season last season. What kind of message is that sending? I mean, yeah, you traded for the guy in the first place. So, I mean, I guess message already delivered. I got to feel like this is going to be probably running back by committee. It'll be interesting to see how this timeshare splits out. Stampeders are winners of 3 straight games. They are an unbeaten 7-0 at home, and over their last 4 games are outscoring opponents by 2 possessions, 34-25. Stamps coming off of a very tight game, a 12-6 win over Montreal. You could almost say they kind of survived the Alouettes, and that's a really weird thing to say. But the Stamps were shut out through the first 3 quarters of that football game. They generate just 306 yards of offense against the Montreal Alouettes, but they clamp down at the end, come up with the win. And when I say clamp down, I mean clamp down. The Stamps defense did not allow the Montreal offense onto the Calgary side of the field until the second to last play of the game in the 4th quarter. Bo Levi Mitchell throws 3 interceptions in this football game, and that could just be his Montreal curse. I mean, he's apparently just snake bitten when he goes to Montreal to play. So it could just be explained as that, but if I'm a Stampeders fan, that's disconcerting to me that my starting quarterback, who again, I've talked about him all season as being average, but they still win, throws 3 interceptions against Montreal. When you've got Master Lulay, all things are possible, especially with the injuries that Calgary's got, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But I do expect a Stampeders bounce back in this football game. So I don't think I can take the Lions here with how poor they've been on the road this season. So straight up, we're going to take Calgary. Against the spread, however, Calgary is favored by 10.5 points at home in this game. I can't take that. Like, I cannot take that in this game. We're definitely on BC plus the 10.5. So far this season, Calgary has been favored by 10.5 points or more 4 times against the spread. How many times have they covered it? Once. 1 time. Lions plus the 10.5. I'm on that very strongly. Total in the game is 49.5 points. It's the lowest total we're going to look at this week. And yet I still think I'm kind of under on it. I feel like it's 2 very good defenses, 2 offenses that we're not sure what we're going to see. The 2 teams are 10-17-1 on the over-under, so that's a pretty strong lean to the under. Even though it's a low number, certainly a low number for the CFL, this is like basically a 30 for the NFL. I think I got to stay under on it. So we're going to stay under 49.5 points as I squeeze my fists to release my anxiety about this. We're going to stay under 49.5 points in BC Calgary. There you go, folks. Those are the picks for Week 18 of the 2018 CFL season, the CFL's Champagne Week, if you will. Let's go over the picks here with you one more time. In Toronto, we've got the Hamilton Tiger Cats visiting the Argos, and I think they hang a loss on the Argos. We're hammering Hamilton, taking the Ticats -7 in a game that goes over 52.5 points. I've got Winnipeg at home, avenging the Banjo Bowl and beating the Saskatchewan Roughriders. We're going to hammer Winnipeg and take the Blue Bombers -3.5 against the spread in a game that stays under the 53 points. We've got Edmonton, desperation with a victory over the Ottawa REDBLACKS, but we're hedging our bets on that one and taking Ottawa +3.5 against the spread in a game that goes over 51 points. And the weekly finale, we've got the Calgary Stampeders at home beating the BC Lions, but we like the Lions +10.5 against the spread in a game that stays under 49.5 points. Folks, I'm far from a great capper of the CFL. There are a lot of great cappers on Twitter. Millhouse Sports is one that I basically swear by. But I'm far from a great capper, but I look at the bets this week and I see tease options all over the place. Like Hamilton, I would say tease Hamilton against the spread. There's a couple of totals that you could tease if you really wanted to. Good luck in your bets if you are so inclined to do so. Enjoy the games in week 18. I hope you've enjoyed the NFL episode from week 6. It was a much quicker episode this week. So we will see you again for week 19 in the CFL, getting very close to the end of the season.